Assalamu alaikum and welcome once again to another episode of the New World Education Podcast. This is a universal education for a universal people. Today we have episode number 12, and episode number 12 is entitled Education Was Our First Fight and It May Be Our Last. And this podcast is sponsored by the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center. And wow, we have a lot to get into today. We have a lot to unpack. So please invite a guest, ask some other people to come join you in this discussion, especially if they are educators, if they are parents, if they are grandparents. Please make sure that you have them tune in today, because we're going to discuss some very, very important topics in such a critical hour as we are in today. My name is Sister Deborah Muhammad. I am one of your hosts. I'm joined on the set along with my lovely co-host, Sister Deborah Muhammad. She's the program manager and also sound engineer. We thank her always for her very insightful commentary. And also we have Sister Gabrielle Muhammad today joining us on the set as always. We gave her a new title. Her title is Sister Make It Plain. So she comes and makes everything plain as your sister, yours truly, tends to make it maybe not so plain. So we thank them for joining us today. Wow. We have so much that we have to deal with. And before we get into it, I just want to say this. This topic, I think, will be very controversial. So we're going to start off this episode with a disclaimer. This disclaimer, we're stating that the information that you hear on this podcast today is the sole commentary or comments of myself and those who are on my set. By no means is it meant to reflect the thoughts of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan of the Nation of Islam. These are our perspectives on what we have been given. So I want to make sure that we make that clear, make that plain. We are not speaking in any official capacity. We are private citizens in our Nation of Islam, and these are our thoughts. So with that being said, we want to go ahead and get off into this topic today. But before we do, we started our new segment, and our new segment deals with current events. And we are looking at the current events today. Well, before I begin with that, if you all could come off mute, just want to hear from you, hear your voices. How's your week been? Anything interesting that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I don't want to spoil what the topic is today, but it's been a very, I'll say, interesting how this turn of events kind of played out. And once you get into what we're going to talk about today, I'll kind of just share with how my week has led up to this point, and very appropriate.
Okay. Sister Demoiselle.
Well, I can't say that I had the same week that she's had. My week has been very easy.
Okay.
And of course, I had to be on the other end of her revelations. So, yeah, but it's all good.
Okay.
We had some very good
divine revelation.
Interesting discussion throughout the week.
Praise Allah. So divine revelation today on the New World Education Podcast. You heard it here first. Okay. No, you didn't hear it here first?
I'm not claiming any divine revelation at all. It might be personal revelation, but not nowhere near.
Okay, so it's not divine. It's not at that level yet. Okay. Praise be to Allah. So let's see here. Just want to kind of make sure that we, anybody join in on the chat. We would love to have you as always. As a matter of fact, before we get started, we had a detractor last week, and yeah, it's okay. I just I answered the detractor with one statement, and then the detractor, of course, rebutted. And I'm working on the next rebuttal, but it will be the final rebuttal because we just don't have time to deal with people who are not our target audience. How about that? So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right into it. I'm going to pull up our first little article here that we're going to deal with. And these articles are coming. I hope that we have a clear screen today. Our first article is going to come from all of the articles actually are coming from the New York Times. Do we see the screen? Are we pretty clear today?
No, ma'am. We see the screen, but it is not clear.
It's still blurry.
Yes.
Well, unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure what the nature of that is. We may have to call Zoom and see what's going on. But anyway, on this side, I can see it just fine. So the New York Times coronavirus school briefing from November 20th, 2020. And we're going to deal with these articles, which are very, very interesting and insightful. But it says here, covering especially being the turn of events that have happened over this last week as relates to education. Now it says covering the seismic changes to the U.S. education from preschool to K-12 to universities that are taking place during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, the first article, it deals with, well, let me start, because this is important. The authors say here, today we share frustrating reactions of New York City parents. The University of Michigan looks back at a troubled semester, and UNICEF warns that school closings are both harmful and ineffective. So the first article is, of course, frustration in New York. And if you have been on the planet Mars or just not really been plugged in, if you didn't know, the New York City schools have closed down. And so you just think about it because they had a spike in cases. Once the spike rose to 3%, then they said that they were going to close the schools down. And so now this is where they are. And New York City, being the largest school system in the United States, logistically, just thinking about all the changes that parents have to make in order to accommodate their children in this has to be very, very difficult. Well, let me ask you this. How is my sound? Is my sound okay, or do I sound too far away?
Loud and clear.
Loud and clear? Cool. All right. So it says on Wednesday, just after the newsletter published, a reporter asked Governor Andrew Cuomo at a news conference if New York City's public schools would be open on Thursday. Parents are still confused, and Jimmy Valkine, a reporter from the Wall Street Journal, said that they are not confused. Cuomo responded loudly, "You're confused." Just a minute later, our colleague Elisa Shapiro broke the news that schools will be closed after less than 8 weeks of in-person classes. This entire summer and fall has been extraordinarily stressful and confusing for parents, Elisa told us. But this week may have been a nadir at the peak of it all. Okay, it says the officials decision, the official decision, finally came down after 2 p.m. in a district email sent to school principals, not from Cuomo or Mayor de Blasio, who had repeatedly delayed his own news conference. Parents had mere hours to arrange for Thursday's childcare. Now, I think that that's very, very interesting that literally in a matter of minutes, people have to negotiate or their whole lives based upon this COVID-19 current spike. And so when we're talking about the school closures and how life has changed as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic, and now the resurgence of it, it really is interesting, especially during this time. At the same time, they're talking about Pfizer and Moderna, and I forget the other one. AstraZeneca is going to come out with the vaccine. I think that's in January. But Pfizer and Moderna have vaccines that are ready to go, that are ready to go at a moment's notice. So you have this dichotomy. Your children out of school, you don't know what to do or how to handle it. Then you have this this vaccine that's coming down the pipe. So you have to make decisions now. Am I able to go to work and make sure that my children get education? The choice is going to be between them being at home or finding some other alternative way of education, or getting this vaccine and having them go back to school. So this is going to be interesting as we continue to unpack this story. So you all have any thoughts on this? This is not the only school system that shut down, but it's just the largest that is shut down this past week because the COVID cases are spiking. What are your thoughts?
I definitely have thoughts, but I can't say that these thoughts are mine, and they're actually the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So I don't know what you have planned more to show. And
go ahead, because we have a lot planned. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Because I wanted to actually show share a video of the minister addressing this situation, this exact situation,
mm-hmm.
A year before now. And
okay, well, I'm gonna give you a co-host privileges, so you go ahead and cue your stuff up. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but I guess just to make a general comment before I bring up the videos, that going back to what I said earlier, the fact that this week we're going to be talking about these the corona vaccine and how that's going to impact going back to school and being admitted back to school, and school closures and things like that. You have those two things conveniently converging at the same time. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting because I think I mentioned that many times here, but I'm saying it again, I'm in law school. And so for one of my my legal writing class, we have a final, and the topic for that class was you have to pick a topic in pop culture that has a legal issue surrounding it, and you have to write a 3 to 5 page paper. And so so he just said, it's up to you what you pick to talk about, and he was just giving us some pointers on pick something that you're passionate about, and then it'll be easy to write about, and it'll flow more for you if you're going to be writing 3 to 5 pages about it. And so I was like, okay, okay, what can I come up with? So I'm thinking, what am I passionate about? And the first thing I said is education. And so I was thinking of doing something on the lines of education. And so I was thinking maybe prayer in school. That's what I was going to, just some type of, because it had to be a legal issue. And so, but specifically, he wanted us to use Louisiana law to resolve the issue or come to a conclusion. And so then that's when we had last week's podcast where we spoke about the spike in cases of corona, and it was causing the schools to close down and presidents of universities being fired and things like that. And I was like, duh, talk about the the possibility of mandatory vaccines and the legality of them all. And so throughout the week, I've been researching Louisiana law on immunizations as far as it goes with education. And I've also been looking up different cases, Supreme Court about mandatory vaccination. And also I watched the debate between Alan Dershowitz and Robert Kennedy Jr. about the possibility of mandating vaccines. And infamously in that debate, this is where Alan Dershowitz, ascribes fault to the minister by advising Black people not to take vaccines because, and again, even he had to, I would give him credit that he said the reason why the minister made that statement is he said because of our history of the American government experimenting on Black people medically. And so he brought up Tuskegee experiment and other different things where the United States government actually would, carry out these poison, the Black community and just see how disease and things take place, and they would just use us as guinea pigs. And so going back again, this is my favorite lecture, and this is actually I wanted to bring this clip up last week, but how the conversation flowed, I just didn't get a chance to bring it up. But it's beautiful how things work out, because just letting the viewing audience know that like it's just us three who are very busy that decide, to get together, discuss these topics. And so, sometimes we're doing this at the last minute. Well, I'm speaking for myself. I'm not gonna speak for anybody else, but have to come up with all these things at the last minute and be ready to talk about it. But the beauty of it is that we always talking about the teachers of the Most High Elijah Muhammad. So it's really nothing to just hop on screen and just have this conversation for you all to view. But I digress.
But like I said in the past, that we decided to do this podcast because we thought that our conversations were so rich, and that it would be nice to be able to let other people in on the conversation, the dialogue, because many people just don't have someone who with whom they might be able to dialogue on all of these different topics. But we're honing in on education, but it takes you everywhere. But we may have to hold your video, being that I know what it is you're talking about now. However, not hold it forever, but just hold it to after we finish the conversation. Yeah. But go ahead.
Oh, I mean, if you okay. So now what was I saying? Because you got me off.
You said now that I digress, or you was
okay. Back onto this video. This is my favorite video, but this is the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan in 2019, before coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic, epidemic, whatever, was a thing. He already gave us instructions on how to deal with this situation. When you are in that valid decision, what was the proper decision? So I was going to play a clip of the minister specifically addressing that, and then I was going to go further into a dialogue about that, and some things that I was able to mine out of just that one, one or two sentences that were full, and that again went full spectrum.
Well, we're going to do that right after we finish the briefings, and then you can do that. But let's, Sister Damsel, any thoughts on this topic yet? Not yet, but just buckle your seatbelt, because we're going to keep on going.
Oh, you know what it was? I didn't finish it. So that was the irony of it all, is that we're going to be talking about this, being that I was already researching this information for a paper.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and hit the next article, even though you all can't see it on that side, but hey, there's what it is. You can see enough of it, I guess. So this is college cases, back to you in college right now, are spiking. And it says the Times has counted more than 68,000 new cases on college campuses since early November. And we're just still in November. Since the start of the pandemic, more than 321,000 people on campuses have tested positive. At least 80 have died. So you're talking about 321,000 cases at 1,700 colleges. And you can see the map, even if you can't read everything on it, on the page, you can see the map. You can see the orange dots. You can see the clusters and the concentration. And you see, of course, most of the cases are on the East Coast. And then it becomes more sparse as you move across to the West Coast. And it has Penn State has 4,353 cases, Florida, 5,008, Clemson has 5,086, Iowa State, 2,169, North Dakota, 1,724, Utah, 1,864, and Arizona State, 2,862. So it looks like the states where people tend to be more right-leaning, if you will, perhaps the people that don't wear masks. Okay, it says to understand the whiplash of this chaotic semester, take a look at the University of Michigan, one of the biggest universities in the country. And then it talks about the flagship campus in Ann Arbor did not initially implement weekly or bi-weekly mandatory testing, even as thousands of students returned to the dorm. Nearly 1 in 3 classes met in person despite protest and outcry from faculty and graduate instructors. The Big Ten football season began after a delay, complete with tailgate parties. Okay. So I guess they really don't have the mindset that this virus, which is constantly mutating, is something to be concerned about. I mean, even if you just got sick, if you ever had the flu, you know that is not a good feeling. And so for you to look at something that could potentially, and they're saying damage many of, if not all of the organs in your body, you just can't be thinking right. Something is wrong with your thinking. So let's look at this next article, and it says a lost generation of students. And UNICEF, the United Nations Agency for Children, weighed in on school closures. All of this stuff, these are just strings on a pearl that are leading up to mandatory vaccines. So what they said, school closures across the globe, its verdict is damning. It says, keeping children at home and causing significant long-lasting harm and has not been effective in curbing the spread of the virus. When schools closed in the spring, some 463 million students worldwide could not access any remote learning. As of November, according to the study, school closures still affect nearly 600 million students. Unless the global community urgently prioritizes the potential of this generation of young people may well be lost, UNICEF warned. And of course, this is once again the United Nations agency, and we know who's connected with that. Okay, so it talks about around the country, college updates. So you have this Jamisha Watto, a 23-year-old student from Livingstone College in North Carolina, died from coronavirus complications on Tuesday. It just goes on and on and on with the different things that have happened. So let's look at the K-12 update. And it says, in the District of Columbia, the teachers union again rejected a preliminary agreement to reopen public schools. And the governor of Kentucky has halted in-person instruction for both public and private students in case of cases rise statewide. On November 30th, all of Denver's public schools students will switch to remote learning until at least January because of dangerously high COVID-19 rates outside of school. In Florida, where the state officials had mandated in-person schooling, threatened to restrict funding for online schooling, schools will be able to offer online classes next semester. And so anyway, we know that, of course, in Denver, Colorado, and in Florida, these are Republican states, and some people think that it's okay not to wear a mask. So, of course, it doesn't mean that everybody is sick or is symptomatic, but it does mean that people potentially are spreading this virus. So with that being said, Sister Gabrielle, I want to go ahead and let you cue up your article. And while you're queuing up your article, I just want to read UNICEF. UNICEF, also known as the United Nations Children's Fund, is a United Nations agency responsible for providing humanitarian and developmental aid to children worldwide. The agency is among the most widespread and recognizable welfare organizations in the world, with its presence in 192 countries and territories. Now, you have to look up these, the World Health Organization, UNICEF, of these mandatory vaccines, because we have found cases where these organizations have actually given tainted vaccines and have been found guilty of giving tainted vaccines to children all over the world. So with that being said, Sister Gabrielle, are you ready to go ahead and bring in your clip?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Can you see the screen with the
Yes,
Honorable
ma'am.
Minister Farrakhan? So again, this is the same lecture from last week, which was a lecture on at the Cobra Convention on Reparations, and this was actually in 2019. And so the minister talked about many things in this lecture, and every drop of it is relevant to just everything. But because of the sake of time, I just wanted to pull out this one part where he addresses the idea of vaccination and going to school.
You wouldn't have to ask nobody's permission.
Yes, sir.
If you were in your own nation,
Right.
you could educate your children the way they should be educated. The education of white America is poison to the black and the brown and the red and even the poor white. Why do you want to stay under that kind of system? Now they're telling you they're going to vaccinate you. And if you don't accept vaccination, you can't go to school. What a blessing.
Okay, that is even though it's very short, that is the essence of many things. It also demonstrates the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan proving that he's divinely guided, because again, as I said, what's the benefit of somebody telling you to look out for that hole that you're about to walk into? Is not so that after you fall into the hole, you can say, you know what, you told me. But it's so you can say, once you avoid that pitfall or that hole, you can say, thank you for the heads up. And so this is in 2009, and I believe towards the 2019, and I believe towards the end of 2019. So this is almost right before this whole pandemic started to develop and play out in society. So here is the minister telling us that it is a blessing that there's also almost this restriction on you being able to go to school unless you get your child vaccinated. But another thing that I noticed that he said is that he said that the white America's education is poison to, you know, again, the black, the brown, the red, and even the poor white. And so again, we were talking about universal education last week. And so again, when
Sister
we're talking
Gabrielle,
about
make your screen larger so we can see.
okay, yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right.
So, but yeah, he was mentioning that the people that it affects, and he used the word poison. And I just had to ponder on that because, again, here we are in the midst of a health crisis, not just in America, but in the world. And so he's saying that he's so juxtaposed the sickness that we associate with getting a virus with the sickness that we associate with getting an inferior education or an education that damages you. And he's saying that the risks of catching a disease, a viral disease, is less than getting an inferior education that will do damage to your mind. And I just have to just think about that. So here's a real world poison that we can see the side effects of, when you see people with respiratory illnesses and different illnesses associated with this virus. And he's saying that is worse, or this education is worse than the risk of getting a disease. And so what that made me do is, of course, as we learn to do, is to parse the word. So I'm going to share. I don't have to share the screen, but I want to share the screen. And I will admit I use Wikipedia because of time's sake, and I didn't have the time to really do the research that I would normally do and go to the sources. It's just all in one place. But I think that this is something that we can agree on that what is true. So as I read, in biology, poisons are substances that can cause death, injury, or harm to organs, usually by chemical reactions or other activity on the molecular scale, when an organism is exposed to a sufficient quantity. Okay? And so also to further distinguish, it says in the fields of medicine, particularly veterinary and zoology, often distinguish a poison from a toxin and from a venom. Toxins are poisons produced by organisms in nature. And venoms are toxins injected by a bite or sting. And this is exclusive to animals. The difference between venom and other poisons is the delivery method. And so again, just how my mind works and associates things. As soon as I think poison and sting, I think, in the supreme wisdom, when it talks about, when this snake or this poison animal will sting you. And so it also
grafted type.
Exactly, of a grafted type, but also,
Can I share your screen?
Okay, oh yeah. No, you can, I'm gonna keep it on here. But also, well, I'll just stop for now. But also when they were talking about the delivery method, so they were saying a venom is specifically when it comes from a bite or when it comes from the mouth. So again, so when we're talking about the this poison education, it is almost like the venom of that snake of the grafted type that it poisons you with its mouth or with its words and its knowledge and in its mind. And so that's what I was thinking on that terms of venom being something specific to an animal. But in general, again, he calls this education poison, which is injurious and damaging and can even cause death. But it was a caveat. It was saying, it said when used in certain amounts. And it took me back to when I was in school, right now in law school, we had a case where somebody drank a bottle of poison that wasn't properly labeled that it was a poisonous substance. But we had a student in the class that had a pharmaceutical background. She was a pharmacy tech. And so she said, well, technically, anything can be a poison if used in the correct dosages. So she was saying, so even a medicine can be considered a poison if it's not used appropriately. And so what I also found interesting, because he said the educational system was poison, and it made me think of the juxtaposition between poison of the educational system and the poison, as we can say, of the virus. So it made me look up the word virus, and I found something else interesting. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so again, I'm using Wikipedia. Please don't shame me. But it's like, again, you can go back and fact check whatever Wikipedia says and then just add it in the comments. But check this out. Look at the etymology of the word virus. The word is from the Latin neuter virus, referring to poison and other noxious liquids, from the same Indo-European base as Sanskrit. Skip all this meaning, all meaning poison. So again, even the word virus is from the root of poison. So again, when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan says that when he talks about vaccines and juxtaposes the education of poison, and you have this virus, the basis of the word virus is the poison. So yes, they are poison, but on different levels. But just in general, I also looking up the etymology of the word virus and finding out that it meant poison. I also looked up how a virus works and how it affects the body and things like that. And
well,
so,
hold that
okay.
word, hold that, because we're going to hit that in just a little bit.
Okay, good. So you can take us down that route, because it's very interesting, the analogy between the poison of the educational system, or the virus of the educational system, and also how the virus, a biological virus, attacks the organism that it hosts.
Okay, well, when we get to that point, then you can bring that point back up. I think Sister Demoiselle had a comment that she wanted to make.
No, I was gonna say what she did, go into the definitions of some of the words that she used, mainly poison, but she already did it. So.
Okay. Well, okay. Well, let's go ahead, and I know Sister Demoiselle will be leaving us in a little bit, so we understand that if you have to abscond or exit stage left, we and you're missing, it's because you won't be here. Okay. So
well, I try to stay on audio until I can. Okay.
Okay, until your next event. Okay.
Yeah.
So our topic today is that, and I want us to really, really, really consider this, is that education, or the issue or the matter of educating our children, was the first real interaction that the Nation of Islam had with the outside world. So in the Nation of Islam, literally, we went to jail based upon this issue. And so I know we love our children. We understand that our children are our future. And without our children, we can't live. And so literally, this issue is front and center. Once again, what are we going to do? What are we willing to do to save our children? So the issue that was in the beginning may be the issue that we transition out of, our relationship with America based on. And I want to read from this most important book, The Message to the Black Man in America, by the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, where he deals with if you want to follow along, it looks like you're reaching. On page 212. 212.
Show the back.
You turn it back, yeah.
So 212, that's good that it looks like that. But we may have to gift you with a new copy. But yes, on page 212, as a matter of fact, Sister Gabrielle, you could read for us starting at the last paragraph, and I'll tell you where to end. It's on page 212, and it starts with "in Detroit, Michigan."
I'm on 112. This is funny because this is the exact pages that I was looking up earlier today on this topic, and it was specifically pages 213 through 215.
Well,
and I was using the index
exactly
for the topic,
okay.
but so we're on the same frequency. Got it. Okay,
That's
so
right. That's how we have to think now. Mhm.
and I promise we haven't talked at all about this topic, but great minds. 212 in Detroit. Is it at the beginning of? Okay, I see it. In Detroit, Michigan, where we were first attacked outright by the police department in April 1934, we were also unarmed. There were no deaths on the part of the believers. However, they fought back against the policemen who attacked them for no just cause whatsoever, but that they wanted our Muslim children to go to their schools. We refused to let the children take their first courses in the public schools, although the high school children in their upper teens could do so. But let us shape our children first.
Continue.
This was the cause of the attack at the time, and Allah was with us, and we had been peaceful there all the while. However, it was said after the battle with my followers who had nothing to fight with but their hands, that there was hospitalization on both sides. There was no loss of lives on the side of the Muslims, and not a gun was fired by them. The lieutenant of police, the captain and commissioner of police had warned them not to use firearms against us because we were not armed. This was true. But when the battle was over, there were more of them hospitalized than there were of us.
Okay. You could go ahead because we need to get down to towards the end of the page.
Okay. 1 year later, in Chicago, Illinois, in the police court on 11th and State Streets, there was a complaint made against one of my followers concerning his children going to our school, the University of Islam. As the courtroom began to fill with spectators, 2 court deputies showed disrespect for the Muslim women. They started pushing them around, and the Muslim brothers resented this harsh handling of the women. The police officers then began beating the men, and almost within seconds, the entire courtroom was in confusion and fight. When the battle was over, the police captain lay dead from a heart attack, and others were wounded by their own gunfire. They opened fire upon my followers point blank in the courtroom because of their Muslims seeking justice in the charge made against us in our school, as in Detroit, Michigan, the previous year. In Detroit, Michigan, the police department charged us with contributing to the delinquency of minors involving one of our students, Sally Allah, who had left the public school and had come over to the University of Islam. They charged us with going around to the various schools, begging our poor Black children to leave the white schools and come over to their own.
And finish that last.
Okay, this is when they made their charge of contributing to the delinquency of minors. The records are in Chicago today for anyone to read. Now, 1 year later, 1935, here in Chicago, Illinois, they attacked us on nearly the same charge. They wanted to school our children. They wanted them to go to their public schools.
Okay, in that last paragraph.
We know.
I think those last two paragraphs, and we'll stop there.
We know that kindergarten children and first graders, once in Islam, cannot be taken into Christian schools without having to suffer mockery and attacks from the Christian children and from the Christian teachers who hate Islam, the God of Islam, and the prophets of Islam. Therefore, we believe that to keep peace with the Christians, we must teach our children in their own schools, although they may study the same textbooks. And this will prevent clashes between the Muslims and Christians over the truth of the history of the people and the spiritual guidance and message that Allah has revealed to me.
So now that was their first fight. And so
it was a big fight.
It was a big fight. And
it was a real fight.
Mm-hmm. It was a real fight. Remember last episode when we talked about that old deluder Satan law of 1642. And so think about the fact that Black people had just been emancipated in 1864, right? How long is 1864 from 1934? 60 years. You're telling me in 60 years, you all of a sudden were that concerned about my children going to your schools that you were trying to go and arrest people for teaching their own children.
Because it's not about teaching your children, it's about them monitoring so they can keep control of your children.
Yes.
So they don't
exactly.
have nothing to do with you teaching them. It's just like not letting us read. So it's the same thing. I'm in control of the mind. They understand, just like we say we love our children and the children are our future. They understand that too. So
Our children are their future too.
exactly. So
Mm.
who's gonna get control of the minds of the children, and whose future is it gonna be?
Exactly. This is a war, like Minister Ava had a lecture series back in the 90s called Mind Wars. It literally is a war for the minds and the hearts of our people, and particularly our children. So with that being said, that we have to really consider what's at the root of what it is that they're trying to do today as it relates to our children as well. And I'm going to turn to another in the message to the Black man. My lighting isn't all that good, but we're going to go with it. It's on page 179. And this, the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad is defending um, his own narrative, his own history, because they tried to, the enemy tried to paint him as somebody who had been in and out of jail and so on and so forth. And he sets the record straight here. And on the top of page 179, he said, I never was arrested and served no jail terms or any charges until 1934. Then I committed myself, he said, to the jail in Detroit after learning that the Michigan State Board of Education had arrested the Muslim teachers of the School of Islam and the secretary of the temple on false charges of contributing to the delinquency of minors. First, he says that he wasn't arrested. He submitted himself to be, in charge, so to speak, because they were arrested. And then he goes on to say, this false charge was dropped and the teachers were free. And I, at that time, was given 6 months probation to put our Muslim children back into the public schools under Christian teachers. This I did not do. And I moved in September of that same year to Chicago. Now, he lets you know this he did not do. Now, let's look at this issue of vaccinations, right? Of mandatory vaccinations. What is all this going to mean? What states have mandatory vaccination laws? Which ones don't? Which states have laws that are based upon conscientious objection, religious or ideological differences? We're going to take time right here and deal with that. So I'm going to share my screen so that we can go through and look at this first, and then we'll come back around to dealing with the whole concept of what's in the vaccine. We're going to give our children vaccines and we don't even know what's in them because we need to have our children in daycare while we go slave for people, and then you have no future because you're working for your children, but then your children become sick because you give them the vaccine or whatever. We're going to deal with that in just a second. So let me pull up the this very interesting chart here. I know that you all can't see it, but you have to bear with me. So can you see anything of this chart right now? It says states with religious and philosophical exemptions from school immunization requirements. I have a link to this in the description box down below. And so you see they have this chart and it says non-medical state exemptions from school immunization requirements 2020. So the legend here says that in blue, it says these states have religious exemptions, and then these that have the diagonal lines have personal belief exemptions. Now, It says that all 50 states have legislation requiring specified vaccines for students, although exemptions vary from state to state. All school immunization laws grant exemptions to children for medical reasons. It says all. There are 45 states and Washington, D.C. that grant religious exemptions for people who have religious objection to immunizations. Currently, 15 states allow philosophical exemptions for those who object to immunization because of personal, moral, or other beliefs. So, and this map, the source comes, it was adapted from the LexisNexis StateNet database and the Immunization Action Coalition in May of 2019. So I'm not going to go through all the acts, but I just want to go through the states. And I'm going to read them for the purposes, it's only, 50 states. So we're just going to go through it, and you have the statutes, and we'll have this in the description box. So if you refuse to vaccinate your children and you have to write a letter of exemption, you'll have the code that correlates to the exemption, and all you have to do is click on it. In the state of Alabama, the first column is religious exemption. Yes. Do you have philosophical exemptions? No. Alaska, you have yes for religious and no for philosophical. Arizona, yes and yes. Arkansas, yes and yes. California, no. You don't have, and that case was recent, relatively recent, in the last 10 years probably, where they had a proposition that was on the ballot that people could not opt out of taking the vaccines. So you see, California and the state of Mississippi do not have exemptions. So you have Colorado, yes and yes. Connecticut, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Connecticut, yes. Excuse me. Delaware, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. DC, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Florida, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Georgia, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Hawaii, the same. Yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Idaho, yes, for both. Illinois, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Indiana, yes. Religious, no. Philosophical. Iowa, Kansas, and Kentucky are the same. Louisiana has yes for religious and yes for philosophical. Maine has no for religious and no for philosophical. I guess I didn't see that on the map, since Maine is so small. Maryland, yes for religious, no philosophical. Massachusetts, yes, religion, no philosophical. Michigan has yes for both. And that's where that landmark case for homeschooling was decided by the fight of the Muslims back in 1934. So for Minnesota, you have yes and yes. Mississippi, no for both. Missouri, yes and yes. And there's an asterisk, so we would have to read what that specific case is. In Montana, no for religious, yes for religious, no for philosophical. And so does Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Mexico follow suit. New York has no exemption for religious or philosophical. North Carolina has religious, but no philosophical. North Dakota has both. Ohio has both. Oklahoma has both. Oregon has both. Philadelphia has both. Rhode Island, South Dakota, South Carolina, South Dakota, and Tennessee all have yes for religious and no for philosophical. And for Texas, you have yes for both, as well as Utah. For Vermont, you have yes for religious and no for philosophical. Virginia, yes and no. Washington, the same. West Virginia, you have no exemptions for religious or philosophical. For Wisconsin, yes for both. And Wyoming, you have yes for religious and no for philosophical. Now, it says here, religious exemptions indicate that there is a provision in the statute that allows parents to exempt their children from vaccinations if it contradicts with their sincere religious beliefs. Philosophical exemptions indicate that the statutory language does not restrict the exemption to purely religious or spiritual beliefs. For example, Maine allows restriction based on moral, philosophical, and other personal beliefs. And Minnesota allows objections based on conscientiously held beliefs of the parent or guardian. And so, what do you all think about that?
I mean, I know one thing I can say is I'm glad that I live in Louisiana. as backwards as somebody, a lot of people might claim Louisiana is on the laws. I was pleasantly surprised to find that was the case when I looked it up myself. But that also means that, you know, the country is pretty much going to be divided on, not divided against each other, but just, you know, literally divided, like half the country can and half the country can't.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But the thing about it is that we live in a, you know, we already live in a global society. So it's no, with airlines and things like that, we know we live in an intercontinental society where people travel across state lines all the time. And that was one of the arguments that Alan Dershowitz was trying to say, why he thinks it's not a law yet, but in his thinking constitutionally, he was saying that should be allowed to be mandated because you know, with travel, interstate travel, it's very easy for somebody to just hop on a plane and spread a virus, you know. But I think that there's more that needs to be looked at than just what the law allows when you're dealing with health, because if all laws come out of some type of their solution to some type of problem, there's a reason that the law was made, and it's to address a concern. And so if the purpose for vaccines is health, that's the main thing that needs to be looked at when we're making laws about vaccines. And if you're having a conversation about vaccines without health being at the forefront, it's really almost contradictory.
That's right. That's true. And that's a very good argument. And I'm sure you'll do well on that paper.
Right.
So what we're going to do is that I want to go ahead and share with us some excerpts from the July 4th, the Criterion lecture of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And because of the length of the clip, the excerpts, what we'll do is that we'll break in, and then we'll bring some information to bear, and then we'll go back to the clip because of the length of it. So let's go ahead and jump into this right quick. And this is on the topic of the COVID-19 coronavirus, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan gives us guidance in the July 4th, 2020 lecture. Okay.
I want to tell you right up front, you will not conquer this virus because it didn't come from Wuhan. It did not come from Fort Detrick in Maryland. Because if you had made it, you would know how to handle what you made. But you don't know this virus. It's new, it's different. It mutates and goes in different directions with a different strain of itself. You're running, trying to get a vaccine, like you are really interested in saving the world from this virus. I'll get to your vaccine in a minute. And the reality of COVID is what we're facing today. I say to my beloved family, brothers and sisters, we have to set an example before the world. I could not allow you to come out without a mask, as though because God has favored us that we are mask free, don't need it. That would make us followers of the foolishness of our government. Isaiah says, "Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers and shut thy doors about thee. Hide yourself, as it were, for a little moment until the indignation be overpassed." Shelter in place. Hide yourself. It's only 2 mentionings in the Quran of pestilence. It is Surah 2, I think it's 69, 59, thank you. It says, a pestilence from heaven is sent down. But those who were unjust changed the word which had been spoken to them for another saying. So we sent upon the wrongdoers a pestilence from heaven because they transgressed. One verse. But the reason for the pestilence is forging a lie against Allah. In the 7th surah or chapter, verse 162, it says, but those who were unjust among them changed it for a word other than that which they were told. So we sent upon them a pestilence from heaven for their wrongdoing. I want you to think about that, because now you want to see why the minister is hated. What have I done?
That's right. Come on, tell the truth.
That members of the Jewish community, some of them, would hate me with such passion.
Yes, sir.
You, my brothers and sisters, who have fallen out with me because they tell lies.
Yes, sir.
To make you think I am a bigot
Come on. Go ahead.
or I'm an anti-Semite, so that you won't listen to what I'm saying. And so far, they've been pretty successful.
Okay, I want to go ahead and kind of stop right here and deal with some of the things that he's talked about in this segment. The first thing that he said, which I thought was interesting, he talked about the vaccine. And he said that this vaccine is mutating. He said you can't, I don't remember the exact words that
You mean
he
the
said.
virus? The virus.
Yes, the virus, I'm sorry. That is mutating, that you can't You're not going to be able to get away from this because you didn't make it, he said. That God made it. And so it's really interesting when you start decomposing what he's saying. Because when I listened at this again, I listened at it with a different ear. And I heard something in it that I didn't quite hear the first time. And he talked about that the consciousness of people have become so wicked that this, just think about this in terms of, you can look at it in metaphysics, you can look at it as quantum reality, that the consciousness of people has to have some type of effect on a physical reality. I mean, you don't even have to get deep with that. I could give you an example of how consciousness affects reality. If you go into, most cities have what they call the garden district. And the reason it's called garden district because it's tended to, that it is kept. There's no overgrowth of vegetation or overgrowth of, grass, or the trees are, they're trimmed and whatnot. A lot of times in the garden districts, it will be in your mid-city areas or in areas that are very old areas that have been kept up by the people who own the homes or their descendants from there. Literally, you can travel a block away in some of these cities. Same area, same types of houses, but it looks totally different and carries a totally different energy. And you might even be able to say that it is a ghetto if you look at it. That's a very real explanation of how consciousness affects a physical reality. So when the minister is talking about how that we have become so wicked, a generation of just idolaters and just being so wicked that it has to have an effect. And when he's talking about the coronavirus coming from heaven, it's literally like, if you think that the earth is a live, organic, conscious entity, when it talks in the Quran about the earth throwing off her burden, that literally, that from that collective consciousness of wickedness on this beautiful planet, that it will produce something to throw off its burden. And so that's one way of looking at it from the perspective that the minister says, because we know that they started in a laboratory, right?
Right.
So coronavirus is not a new virus. The COVID-19 is a form of the coronavirus. And so, yeah, he said it's almost like it has its own mind, a mind of its own. It's mutating, it's changing. And you think that you can get to it, like we talked about quantum physics and then the quantum reality, which we'll go into when we start dealing with what's in this virus. I mean, what's in the vaccine for the virus. Okay, Sister Gabrielle.
When you were kind of describing like this consciousness that of the earth, that it has to know when it's time to shake off its burden, it made me think of like the process of, and because I was looking up viruses and things like that, and I ended up coming across bacteria, and a distinction between viruses and bacteria, but that has nothing to do with it. But what I was thinking of is how, when an organism dies, something within the organism upon death starts the decaying process where you will have those bacteria and things that were dormant inside of that body to start to do what they were made to do, is to, break down that organism and into the different substances, and so it can distill back to the earth to nourish the earth for a new growth. And this is what's going on. Kind of reminds me of like how when the death process sets in, because it's like, okay, you're walking around living all the time, and these things are already in you. But for some reason, when death comes, the body actually releases a poison that begins to break it down to its,
the immune system is not fighting.
Right. And so that's the thing. So, in death, when you don't want to be around a dead thing when it's decaying, you want to separate dead things from living things, because they will start to infect the other living things.
I think you froze, Sister Gabrielle. Okay, you froze just for a second. Affect the living thing.
Okay. Yeah, okay. I didn't know if I froze or you froze, but it says I have internet connection issues.
Okay.
But but that was what came to mind, is that, this body, that we call, I can't even just say America because it's the entire world, but it's going through a certain type of death. And so it's vital right now for us who are among the living, among the dead, to separate ourselves from the death that we see going on around us.
Come on.
Unless that death will overtake us.
Now see, that's what the comment that I had, that the minister then gives us the scriptures. And he talks about us going into our chambers. He talks about the pestilence coming because they changed the words from their places. If we don't, it's like taking his words and not trying to, in any way make any type of interpretation. But when he's talking about going in your chambers and separating yourself, it's literally like, this is the opportunity, as you said, for the living to separate itself from the dead. And that's, if we really understood this. And so just think about it in terms of what you're saying. And then let's factor in our children. Literally, it's like we're sending our children back out every day into a graveyard where the bodies are just on top of the ground, not even buried, getting infected by not only the poison of the virus, but the poison of this mind and this consciousness that is literally killing the world.
Right. And I was thinking also, when you were talking about the consciousness of the people being so bad that it's getting out of control. And I know you would always say this, and I think you said this on the podcast before, but then I was like, I didn't agree. But in this context now, I can admit that I, changed my opinion on that. But what you were saying is that, you didn't even think that the people, the founders of this education system, although they did set it up to benefit them at the detriment of the masses, even they couldn't even predict that, even though they made it for a purpose, a nefarious purpose, that it would even get so bad that it would start to ill affect them. And I'm paraphrasing, but the Most Honorable Muhammad said, if white man's going to poison his water, our water, he's going to poison his too. And so that's like this mind that they really set off in reserve for lower class people, don't indiscriminate of race, but lower class people. Now that same mind that they set off for the different classes of people is even starting to affect them, because you can look at it with pop culture, how pop culture has really, pop culture used to be something like white people's, in America, white people's idealized version of American society, with the Beach Boys and things like this. But they would steal songs from Little Richard and black people like that, and then make this vanilla version of the song. But they would try to keep it tame. They didn't allow white folks to do all those runs in their song, and they kept it very palatable to all people. But now, even the face of hip hop is no longer exclusively a Black thing, or it's no longer exclusively like a low class thing. And so, let's be honest, the culture of hip hop is a deaf culture, but yet that deaf culture has infected, white homes, and then they fought to keep that away from their children, but now it's even ill affecting their children. So you have Kylie Jenner, who's a billionaire, but
A
she
baby
has
daddy.
the right, but exactly, and she has the mentality
Right.
of a Negro.
Right.
But she has $1 billion. And
Yes.
so, she has access like any person with the virus, they have access to these quarantine spaces. And now they're bringing that, she might vacation in Ibiza or the Fiji Islands or Mar-a-Lago. I can't go there, but
She's taking our mind there.
Yes, she's taking that infected mind into those places that
And disclaimer,
sanitized.
hip hop is not necessarily a deaf culture, or at least it was not until it got co-opted
Yes.
by people who wanted to steer it in that direction. But hip hop in its inception actually was an upliftment for Black people who were downtrodden. So, now what it's degenerated into, and every now and again, they'll sneak in something that is reminiscent of the inception of hip hop. But
right,
yeah,
but
I understand.
It's not coming from the interlopers
Right.
that came into it. But and at the same time, somebody made this. I was watching this YouTuber, and she was talking about how she was like, she can't believe 2020 is real, because she says that she was watching CNN, and she said Cory Booker was on there, dropping S-bombs, and now people, the news pundits,
they surely
supposed
are
to be the models,
That's right.
They were known for their professionalism and their poise.
That's
and
right.
Now they're cursing and using vulgar language.
That's right. That's right.
And it has degenerated all the way.
And
to
now
their
they're newscasting from their homes. What's the lady that was on NBC? Used to be with Matt Lauer, Katie Couric. I saw her the other day. She's doing something from her home, like we're doing right now. So she was just, her decorum was just, it was not what we were used to seeing on the network TV. But yeah, I agree.
I was about to say.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, but that goes to show you, even though this may sound cliche, but the power of the people, because they have to adjust to what the people are doing, the masses are doing, or accepting. And so that really just is what that is. That, if they could hold up the veneer of being poised and all this other stuff, they would. But with the advent of this internet and them not expecting it to go the way that it has gone, they have to what is the saying?
When in Rome.
Yes. So that's kind of the deal.
That's true. Exactly. That's so true, because I was shocked. I was like, clutch the pearls. Katie Couric.
But even all the way to the house of the presidency. He is living in the White House, in white, again, meaning purity, because the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is wearing white on this video, some little white carpet. But yet you have the president of the United States, who they say represents the leader of the free world and the upholder of democracy and civilization in the world, and he's bringing this
gutter
infected mind, into the White House. So again, you can't, when you share a space, you can't expect to do harm over here and that not eventually affect you at some point. And so what we're seeing is just the natural feedback of what you put into something, that's what you get out. And even going to the internet, and again, why are we so degenerate today? Is because when they made the internet, they never expected for people to use the internet for their benefit and to do research and find out the truth about the things that they were doing. So what they do is they had to pump more madness into the internet, because social media, before it was what it is today, you remember the Arab Spring, the it when all those different governments were being toppled in the U.S. I mean, in what year was that? Like 2016?
I can't remember what year, but I do. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they had the young people who were already on social media for social purposes, maybe even business purposes. They were like, you know what? Instead of just trying to socialize, we're going to use this to actually, tell the truth about what's going on and circumvent mainstream media that's never going to tell the entire story. And so when they realized that you had people looking up YouTube videos, when they got the information back, people are looking up information about vaccines and the education system and different things like that, they say, oh no, we have to
I think the
use
first
the same tool. Okay.
exactly. 2010 was the Arab Spring, but just to your point,
wow.
so that we can move on a little bit. Yeah, and we'll probably go over time today so we could get to a point, because of the fact that this thing is moving so quickly with this vaccine, that we want to make sure that we are clear what we're saying. But the Arab Spring was 2000. I'm trying to remember what my point was. It was something that needed to be said. Oh, I'm not sure if this is it, but what I will say is that Google, which owns YouTube, Google was actually a media company. It was a marketing company. It was never intended to be, they just gave a search engine, because that way, when we search the internet, they could get analytics on us, and then they could begin to start, selling advertisement to certain, based upon the analytics. And so then what happens is that they figure out that, oh, okay, we can even get more into what people are doing and thinking and seeing by allowing them to upload, videos. So whatever videos that you uploaded, most people weren't in front of the camera when YouTube first started. Most people were, just upload some videos, music videos, a couple of videos, and the videos were just 10 minutes long at that time. But then, of course, as with anything, they saw the benefit of being able to use those videos. They extended the time when people had more subscribers to be able to get advertisers to buy ads on these people who now we know as influencers on their channels. So this whole thing with the internet, with social media, has never been about just giving you a space where, like MySpace, where you could just, have your conversations and meet friends from high school and whatnot. Mm-hmm. It was always about monitoring the people of the world. And so now they're going to another level. Yes, ma'am. And then we're going to go to the next thing.
On even the language of this whole thing about when you hit a certain, you start to gain traction on the internet, whether they call it, they said you go viral. So again, you're talking about a mindset.
That's right.
That is comparable to a virus. And so, and then again, a lot of things that do go viral are low frequency.
That's right.
Information.
And the minister says Satan is like a retrovirus. And so with that being said, let's go into this whole coronavirus, this coronavirus, and more specifically, the vaccine for it. Right. Of course, you know that with vaccines, they say it takes, several years to come up with the vaccine, right? And so for them to be able to push out a vaccine in a matter of 8 months, and they call this Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccine. So this is coming from an article in the Independent. And the title of the article is, "What is COVID vaccine made of? Trends on Google as Pfizer and Moderna seek FDA approval." Now, I want to go down to this particular article, this particular part of the article. It says the experimental vaccine from Pfizer and Moderna are technically called BNT 162b2 and mRNA-1273 respectively, are created synthetically using messenger ribonucleic acid, or mRNA, RNA, and DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, are nucleic acids that carry genetic instructions for creating life. Okay, I just want to hone in on that. Rather than injecting an organic version of the virus to generate an immune response, mRNA contains snippets of the coronavirus spike proteins, a genetic code that tells the body cells to produce a small facsimile of the spike proteins, which kickstart the immune system to produce antibodies. And then it says, for the Googlers wanting to know what exactly the COVID vaccine is made of, it becomes a question of chemistry in creation of that synthetic messenger RNA, which is proprietary information buried in a complex web of patents. Neither Pfizer nor Moderna immediately responded to requests for the breakdowns of the chemistry in the BNT 162b2 or mRNA-1273. Paula Cannon, an associate professor of microbiology at the University of Southern California's Keck School of Medicine, told The Independent that the vaccine developers have improved on, are you ready for this? They have improved on natural RNA, which are short-lived and fragile, to make them more stable and longer lasting. Now, this is where I want to end this with. Maybe, yeah. No, I'll end it with the second one, but this is the key thing. She said, they can be made entirely synthetically. You don't need a biologist on board to make these. You need a chemist, said Miss Cannon said. And then I'll end it here. Part of the secret source of these vaccines is that the chemists have found a way to modify RNA to improve on what nature has developed to increase stability and damp down its foreignness to the body. We don't want the body to freak out about RNA that's been injected into it. So there's been some chemical modifications to make the RNA a bit more stealthy. Now, let's look, and then I'm gonna let you bring in what you had to say, Sister Gabrielle. Let's bring in the definition of what RNA is. Now, the definition here, RNA is a ribonucleic acid. A nucleic acid present in all living cells. Its principal role is to act as a messenger. That's the M in front of the RNA. A messenger carrying instructions from the DNA for controlling the synthesis of proteins. Although in some viruses, RNA rather than DNA carries genetic information. So not only are these vaccines introducing something, because with the RNA, what it does is that it gets inside of the cell, like the minister says, like a retrovirus. This RNA gets inside of the cell and rewrites a code over the cell. So when you're talking about, what is that going to do to the human being? And they're talking about gene therapies, and they're even talking, let's break this down. Now, they haven't tested these on children yet. These vaccines have been tested on adults, supposedly of ages, pretty large age range of people of all ethnic backgrounds. Now, they haven't tested them on children. However, you're saying that something synthetic is better and more natural than something that is organic. That, first of all, doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because the human being was made with precision. And so anything that is natural is always going to be better, because when you introduce a foreign antigen, antibody, virus, bacteria to the body, of course, like they said, the immune system response goes after attacking that foreign agent. And so you're not only introducing something that is foreign in terms of a virus, you're introducing a synthetic version of it. They have not had enough testing to know what the long-term effects of this may be. And when you're talking about giving this to your children, who we have no clue long-term, because the studies they haven't had long-term studies, what this vaccine may do to us. But we know it's carrying genetic material. And when we're talking about genetics, we're talking about your genes. And many people try to say that this man right here, Elijah Muhammad, was teaching mythology about a man named Yacob. I beg to differ, because if it can happen now, that means that the possibility of it happening before is even greater, because I want to bring one fact into play, that you have something over in Africa called the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Even to this day, ma'am.
I said, I figured that's where you were going.
Yes, even to this day, they cannot figure out how, without using modern technology, that these structures can be erected. Even with your modern cranes, to be able to lift blocks that are that large, and them not to even have mortar in between them, with the precision at which they were cut. Some of the sarcophagus they're made out of granite, and they are exact 90-degree angles. How do you cut something like that without some kind of technology? So you mean to tell me that a man named Mr. Yacob could not have existed 6,800 years ago? It's very possible, for the simple fact that you can't figure out how. So that's how you start chipping away at their arguments when they say that this man named Mr. Yacob, this is the big head scientist, this is some kind of fairy tale. No, it's not a fairy tale. You all are just a Johnny come lately people that are really studying Elijah Muhammad and what he did to make, what he taught us about what this man, Mr. Yacob, did to make his man. And you're trying to make a new man genetically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I mean, you went, you speak in my language, it's my favorite. That's my favorite topic is Yacob, and that's exactly where I was going to go with this, is dealing with the history of Yacob and the things we can learn from it. But going back to what you were talking about with virus and the whole thing about understanding how a virus works. And so I'm going to share my screen again, go back to this Wikipedia page. Y'all talk about me, but it is what it is. But still can learn from it. And again, if you disagree with Wikipedia, it's not me, it's Wikipedia. So you take it up to Wikipedia and follow your scientific, peer-reviewed journal about how wrong. But it says a virus is a submicroscopic infectious agent that replicates only inside of living cells of an organism. So that's interesting just in that language itself, but I'm going to continue. It says, viruses infect all types of life forms, from animals and plants to microorganisms, including bacteria and archaea. So I'm going to skip down. That's just an overview of that, but I'm just going to skip down to different parts because there's different parts that stuck out to me. So it says, when infected, a whole cell is forced to rapidly produce thousands of identical copies of the original virus. When inside an infected cell or in the process of infecting a cell, viruses exist in the form of independent particles or virions consisting of the genetic material, i.e. long molecules of DNA and RNA that encode the structures of the proteins by which the virus acts. A protein coat, the capsid, which surrounds and protects the genetic material, and in some cases, an outside envelope of lipids. So going back down, just giving you an overview of how a virus works. So again, a virus really is a package of genetic material.
That's what it is.
Or what we understand as DNA or RNA, what makes you. And then it's interesting how they said the way that it works is that it encodes a protein. And that's, again, the language that you can find with computers. You have computers codes and you have computer viruses. But in viral infections in animals provoke an immune response that usually eliminates the infecting virus. Immune responses can also be produced by vaccines, which confer an artificially acquired immunity to specific viral infection. So again, the virus, how your immune system works, is that it's built to interact with viruses because viruses are all around us. Viruses are in everything, and viruses encode genetic information, or viruses encode data. It's just data.
Yes.
And so they're all around us, but when they come in, they cause the immune system to go to work to recognize it and file this data away for use later. But the thing about a vaccine, it creates an artificial immunity. But the thing, like you were saying, with artificial immunity, the body is so wise. Allah made the body so wise. He put himself in there, is that even the body can recognize when something is artificial and not natural. So the body instantly recognizes this thing as, because some viruses are foreign to your body, but it can tell the real virus from a fake virus. And so, I already talked about the etymology of virus, which comes from the root Latin word that means poison. So your body is made to recognize poison, and it can recognize a natural poison from an artificial poison. But also, we said that a thing that is a poison depends on the amount. Something that is poison depends on the amount that is used. So going back to making me think about, that brown germ and the black germ, and there was a certain that why did you have to ask the question, why did Allah make devil? But like I said, I'm giving all this was just like setting off explosions in my mind about the language of the lessons, and then let me rethink what is devil then. And when you were talking about DNA and things like that in a virus. But okay, here in the role in human disease, because this is what everybody wants to know. So examples of common human diseases caused by viruses include the common cold, influenza, chickenpox, and cold sores. Many serious diseases such as rabies, Ebola virus disease, AIDS, HIV, avian influenza, and SARS are caused by viruses. Check this out, the relative ability of virus to cause disease in turn is described in the term of virulence. So virulence is like a scale, like a sliding scale on how likely it is to cause disease. Other diseases under investigation to discover if they have a virus as the causative agent, such as possible connection. Okay, this is other things, because I was getting to a point where it was saying about the state of the immune system is going to determine how that virus plays out in the body.
That's right.
And so viruses have different mechanisms which they produce disease in the organism, which depends largely on the virus species. Mechanisms at cellular level primarily include cell lysis, the breaking open and subsequent death of the cell. In multicellular organism, if enough cells die, the whole organism will start to suffer the effect. Although viruses cause disruption of healthy homeostasis, and as we go back to middle school biology, homeostasis is a big word that means the balance of the body.
Equilibrium.
The equilibrium of the body, right? And so viruses, they disrupt the balance. And so,
that's right.
And so, Sister Deborah, this is your lane. What does the study guide say about that?
The struggle for balance.
Right. And then when you cause a disruption in the healthy homeostasis, it results in disease.
Disease.
So again, we think that, a lot of times, I'm not going to say just in the Black community, but a lot of times in uninformed of science populations, we think that disease works by magic. That if you automatically get coughed on, you're going to get sick, or that when viruses attack your body, they do something. I don't know, that magic happens. You just get sick if they get inside of you. But the key is that it upsets a balance. So whether the balance is left or right, each side of that balance is going to be disease. So really the thing that what health represents is the balance.
That's right.
And viruses come in to upset that balance. But at the same time, Allah made you to struggle for balance because he gave you an immune system that was meant specifically to deal with viruses. So Allah set you up to prevail over disease, over virus. But your part that you have to do is that you have to be balanced when these viruses or these poisons come at you. Because if you're not on your square, those balances will be upset and it will cause you to get sick.
Well, let me just bring this in. Let me just bring this in. Now, you're introducing a new virus into the gene pool, right? And by nature of viruses, that they can only express themselves when the immune system is suppressed. And they say that this COVID-19 is an immunosuppressant type of virus. And so what happens is that if you watch the nightly news, the first thing they talk about, COVID spikes all over the country. People are dying, the deaths, this or that, school closures, people don't have money, food lines, testing so they put all of this negative energy into the consciousness stream, which causes stress on the mind, and the stress on the mind causes the physical reaction on the body to lower the immune system so that these opportunistic viruses can attack where you are weak, where your defenses are down. And so that this whole, idea of the virus being out there and it becoming a pandemic has a lot to do with also the stress. Because say, for instance, like they have the herpes virus, they have shingles, they have the cold sores, the HIV virus, all of those things manifest themselves. They're in the body. The genetic material lives in the body. I mean, it doesn't live in the body. It's attached to a living thing and is there hiding under the sheet of the protein. But whenever the body is not healthy, what happens, or is under stress, the unhealthy stress, because there is healthy stress. Fasting is a healthy stress. What happens is that those viruses, they strike at that time. So I'm just saying that the conditions that we're living in this world is helping to heighten this, spike in the coronavirus related illnesses.
Mm-hmm. But and because you're going there, I'm just gonna finish this little section and then we're gonna move on. But it says, although viruses cause the disruption of healthy homeostasis resulting in disease, they may exist relatively harmless within an organism.
Mm-hmm.
So it says an example would include the ability, like you said, of herpes, which causes cold sores to remain dormant within the body. This is called latency, going to what you were mentioning from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan about a retrovirus.
Mm-hmm.
And so it mentioned some other things about it, but it says most people have been infected with at least one of these type of herpes virus.
Mm-hmm.
These latent viruses might sometimes be beneficial, sometimes be beneficial, going back to poison. It depends on the dosages, and it depends under the dosage and the circumstances when these things are being introduced into the body. And the presence of the virus can increase immunity against bacterial pathogens.
As long as it's not too much.
Exactly. So some viruses can cause lifelong chronic infections, where viruses continue to replicate in the body despite the host's defense mechanism. So that goes back to that immune response that is built into your body. And it says people chronically infected are known as carriers, and they serve as reservoirs of infectious virus. And so population with high portion of carriers, the disease is said to be an epidemic. So again, when we think that just because you have a virus, you are going to be sick. When you have a virus, you become really dangerous to people who are not healthy.
That's right.
It's like, so when specifically dealing with viruses and the way they work, so everybody has these things. So if somebody says you have coronavirus, that means you have corona data. You have corona information present in your body. But if you come in contact with somebody else who is sick, they can, because of their disease or unhealthy or low immune system, they can fall ill. So the solution to a virus is not a vaccine. The solution to a virus is a healthy immune system.
That's right.
And so we are given a way to improve our health in how to eat to live. Not saying that vaccines are bad or evil, but the most effective, thing against disease is what's already built into you. Like you said, something that's natural. The most effective thing for when a child is born to feed off of is the mother's breast milk, because that's what it was built and made for. That relationship is put in our nature for us to go with that. And that's the same thing with viruses. And so when we understand viruses just being one, having knowledge, but after we have knowledge of what causes disease and how we can fight them, the second thing is discipline. If we don't have discipline, we can know the solution and still yet not execute.
That's right.
Because we don't want to discipline ourselves and submit to a healthier lifestyle. And that was the argument that Robert Kennedy Jr.
Could you bring your screen down if you finish, please?
Oh, yeah. That was the argument that Robert Kennedy Jr. rebutted Alan Dershowitz's argument, is that he was trying to say that the polio disease was eradicated or dealt with via vaccine. And Robert Kennedy Jr. said that's rebuttable, because they also had advances in, now they had electric refrigerators, they had better nutrition, and they also had better hygiene. So again, when we're talking about cleanliness is godliness. So again, you shouldn't lean on vaccines, because vaccines are for people who don't have really good health. And a lot of times the reason we don't have good health is because our own lack
negligence.
of yes. But again, sometimes, but the reason we don't have a lot of times for most people is the reason that we don't do better is because we don't know better. So
that's right.
Starting with education. This is what a superior education from Allah, like the minister was saying.
That's right.
So this didn't come from you. So the solution has to come from heaven.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm gonna take us to this video, and once again, we're dealing with, and just to bring us back center, give us our North Star. And that is that this topic is dealing with that our first fight in the Nation of Islam was on the topic of education. And that might become, one of our last fights, because the FDA, once they give approval for this emergency use for these, it's 3 vaccines that have been produced, one by Moderna, one by Pfizer, and there's another company. But you have 2 more coming on. I think it's Bayer and AstraZeneca is coming on in January approximately. But this is the thing. They said once this virus has been approved for emergency use, that the U.S. military is on standby for distribution of this vaccine across the United States. Now, the question is, why is the military going to be responsible for distributing this vaccine across the United States? They have the first persons who will be receiving the vaccines will be healthcare workers, frontline workers, first responders, and the like. I'm not sure, and I'll look it up in just a second, but I believe that teachers, if they're not in the first group of the population, they're going to be in the second group. So they're not only, if you have children in school, if you are out there and you are a teacher in the public school, they're going to offer you this vaccine. And so you may not take it, but then once the people around you start taking it, who may actually be carriers of the virus, they will become comfortable and relax, all of the different protocols that are being used, and you're out there fighting this virus from every angle. It's just like any kind of war. If somebody's constantly bombarding your defenses, they may go down. So we have to think about that. And then with our children, same thing here. Now, what I want to do is go to another article, and then we're going to go back to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I want to take time to deal with this because these vaccines may be rolled out any second now. And so you need to have information before you allow your children to be vaccinated. Just have the information, and what you do with it from there is on you. But don't say that we didn't try to warn you. Okay, this next article is from Horizon. It's the EU Research and Innovation magazine. And so it says 5 things you need to know about mRNA vaccines. And I'm just going to go to the bullet points. And it says here in the this little write-up, it says that the race for a vaccine against the novel coronavirus, or SARS-CoV-2, is on, with 54 different vaccines under development, 2 of which are already being tested in humans, according to the World Health Organization. Among the different candidates is a new player on the scene, mRNA vaccines. Guess I'll just go ahead and read the first paragraph. One mRNA vaccine developed by U.S. company Moderna began its first human trials on the 16th of March. That was before really the country got shut down. So they were trying this before this virus should have been even properly identified, because if you remember at the time in March, they were saying that they didn't have a test for the COVID-19. They were saying that if you had certain symptoms, then you could conclude that you had it, but there was no test. So they started human testing back in March. So it says, whereas another under development by German company CureVac has been offered to 80 million, that's euros, 80 million euros in investment by by the European Commission. But what exactly are mRNA vaccines, and why could they be promising to fight against the coronavirus? We spoke to Professor Isabella, let me see if I can pronounce this, Beckerjan Ding, Isabella Ding, okay, head of the microbiology division of Germany's Paul Ehrlich Institute, which provides scientific advice to companies including CureVac, and who sits on the scientific community of Europe's Innovative Medicines Initiative. Here are 5 things to know. 1, is there a whole new type of vaccine? And so it says that now just listen to this. This is a whole new type of vaccine. So you're willing, without a vaccine even having gone under trial, human clinical trials for enough time, be willing to put that in your bloodstream, which can irrevocably change you? Because we just said that with the viruses and what they're putting in here is a synthetic virus that is going to be in your body forever. And it hadn't even gone under clinical trials. And it says they're a whole new type of vaccine. If an mRNA vaccine was approved for a coronavirus, it would be the first of its type. It's a very unique way of making a vaccine. And so far, no such vaccine has been licensed for infectious diseases. Number 2, they could be more potent and straightforward to produce than traditional vaccines. Easier to make, synthetic. There are 2 parts of our immune system: innate, the defenses we're born with, and acquired, which we develop as we come in contact with pathogens. Classical vaccine molecules usually work with the acquired immune system, and the innate immune system it activates by another ingredient called an adjuvant. Interestingly, the mRNA vaccine could also trigger the innate immune system, providing an extra layer of defense without the need to add adjuvants. I'm sorry, this little text is small on the screen. So let's go to number 3. Most of what we know about the mRNA vaccine comes from work on cancer. Okay, most of the work on using mRNA to provoke the immune system response has so far been focused on cancer, with tumor mRNA being used to help people's immune system recognize and respond to the proteins produced by their specific tumors. This technology was very good for the oncology field because you can develop a patent specific vaccines because every tumor is different, said Professor Ding. Number 3, there are a lot of unknowns. So when we're talking about this virus, there are a lot of unknowns. Because mRNA vaccines are only now beginning to be tested on humans, there are a lot of fairly basic unknowns which can only be answered through human trials. What is really the current challenge, I think, is to understand whether these vaccines will really be able to mount a sufficient protective immune response to the human, and to understand, for example, which quantities of mRNA, back to what you were saying, Sister Gabrielle, will be needed to do this. And 5, it would be possible to vaccinate on a large scale. This is one of the other things. Once messenger RNA or mRNA vaccine has been approved, which could take 12 to 18 months. Okay, now, you know, we're at 9 months now. It says that it should be easy to scale up the production because the manufacturing process is shorter than the other vaccines. The professor estimates a few months rather than 1 to 2 years for conventional vaccines. There is a potential for these vaccines to be scaled up quickly. It is useful in the context of the coronavirus, which they will need mass immunization programs. Now, what I want to say about that is that you're talking about this vaccine that it didn't take the amount of time that it normally takes. This is a synthetic material, which they're going to scale up quickly and produce, you know, of course, in almost factory style. They already have, I think it's Pfizer, has vials already pre-loaded to use to give these dosages. They're going to be distributed by the military. Now, I mean, I want us to think about this. This is going to be distributed by the military. We're going to look at what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has to say. I know that we're going over because we are going over, because this vaccine could be out as early as this week, or this upcoming week, or approved by the FDA, and they said they'll have it out. So we need to know before we allow ourselves to put this into our children. Of course, right now, they have not done clinical trials on children. So this vaccine will not be ready for children. But if you are a frontline worker, if you are in the medical profession, if you are a first responder, you may be told that you need to take this. And in the medical profession, you know, they're more than likely going to tell you to take it. But little fact, if you didn't know, that there's such a shortage for medical professionals or medical workers that now in some states in the Midwest, they're allowing people who have been tested positive for the coronavirus that are asymptomatic to work in the hospitals because of the shortage. Now, let's go ahead and go to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and then hopefully we'll be wrapping it, bringing it down at this point. So we'll go on back to him.
That's why you founding fathers could never make the Constitution real for us. That's why you make laws and you break them. You make promises and you break them. But now, what will you do with Corona? A pestilence from God.
Yes, sir.
What will you do?
Yes, sir.
What can you do? You are at your wit's end. I say to my brothers and sisters in Africa, if they come up with a vaccine, be careful.
Yes, sir.
Don't let them vaccinate you with their history of treachery through vaccines, through medication. Are you listening?
Yes, sir.
I say to the African presidents,
Yes, sir.
do not take their medications.
Right.
I say to those of us in America, We need to call a meeting of our skilled virologists, epidemiologists, students of biology and chemistry. And we need to look at not only what they give us, we need to give ourselves something better.
Yes, sir.
So my teacher told me, don't speak for some, speak for the whole. And now I'm speaking for Black America, for Hispanic America, for the Native American, and for those who are desirous of life. They're making money now, plotting to give 7,500,000,000 people a vaccination.
That's right.
Dr. Fauci, Bill Gates and Melinda,
Yes, sir. That's right. That's right.
you want to depopulate the earth. What the hell gives you that right? Who are you to sit down with your billions and talk about who can live and who should die? That's why your world is coming to an end quickly, because you have sentenced billions to death, but God is now sentencing you to the death that you are sentencing to others. Yes, Allah is great. So whether I'm present or absent,
Go ahead.
the Executive Council of the Nation of Islam
Yes, sir.
must call our scientists.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Come and let's sit down.
Yes, sir. Right.
Our virologists, our epidemiologists,
That's right.
those of us who know the science. We cannot let them bring anything to us that we don't dissect. Don't you take a vaccine unless you say to our people, we've checked it out. And you better be of the truthful ones. But Farrakhan, if we don't take the vaccine, we're sure to die. You're dying for sure now. They want to quicken death. Yes, brothers and sisters, they are in the Bible as the pale horse of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The pale horse had a rider, his rider was death.
Yes, sir.
And everywhere that pale horse went, hell followed behind.
That's right.
This is your history. You're angry with me.
Yes, sir.
I'll take it,
Right.
because the two that back me are very angry with you.
Yes, sir.
And the righteous are becoming more angry with you with every passing day. Imagine some Caucasians sitting in a room plotting the death of 2 to 3 billion human beings, calling them useless eaters. That's Satan. That's the mind of Satan. You know how Satan's mind begins? It begins with these words. When asked, why didn't you submit when I commanded you? And the satanic mind says, I am better because I am made of fire, while he is made from dust. The moment any of you, any of us, begin to think we're better, we start mistreating those whom we think are less.
That's right.
So white people think naturally. This is not a fault, this is their nature,
That's right.
that they are better. Look at the words. Let us make man in our image and after our likeness. How did the Caucasian come into existence?
Come on.
You can bring your scientists and we'll sit down.
Right. Right.
Because my teacher said, if you can prove one word that he taught us as false, he will pay with his life. And I am his student, I'll pay with mine because I believe in every word that he taught.
Yes, sir.
You're not a natural man, you're a grafted man. With a birth control mechanism, killing the darker, saving the lighter, marrying the lighter on to the lighter, killing the darker of the lighter,
Right.
marrying that on the lighter with the lighter until you get black, you get brown, you get red, you get yellow, you get white. And when the white man was made, his father was a liar, his father was a murderer.
Yes, sir.
So they're born with lie and murder in their nature. How do they lie so easily?
Yes, sir.
If you could read the record, the police records of what they say in their reports that they write,
That's right.
they have concocted lies to justify their murder of our brothers and sisters. Why are the police quitting now? You should all quit. Because if your presence there thinks that you're going to come into the black community and do what you've been doing, you better quit.
Yes, sir.
The jump out boys better stay in the white community. Don't come where we live and jump out, because you may never get back in. Real talk now. We can't take it no more. We won't take it anymore. So you develop your vaccine. Mr. Dershowitz, listen to the words of God from my mouth for you. You're such a skillful deceiver. You deceived your brothers in the Senate to vote not to impeach Mr. Trump. You were very skillful. But see if you can impeach the wisdom of God. You're Satan, masquerading as a lawyer. Satan, walking in full sight, deceiving whoever they can deceive. That's Satan. It's my job. I got it. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's better. Oh, yeah. No, I'm good. Y'all can see me, right? Yes, sir. Mr. Greenblatt.
Yes, sir.
You're Satan. Those of you that say that you are Jews, I will not even give you the honor of calling you a Jew. You're not a Jew. You're so-called. You're Satan. And it's my job now to pull the cover off of Satan so that every Muslim, when he sees Satan, pick up a stone, as we do in Mecca. Did you hear me, Brother Abdul Malik? when you know who Satan is,
Yes, sir.
you don't have to kill him. No. The stone of truth. See, that's what you throw.
Right, right.
Allah says, had we wished to take a pastime from before us, surely we would have done it. Nay, we cast truth at falsehood till we knock out its brains. Every one of you that knows the truth, stand up and tell it from the mountaintop. Black people can't take it no more. So wherever you are on the job, in the factory, I don't care where you are. If you know the truth, stand up on the truth and tell Satan, who the hell are you to try and pick my friends? Farrakhan is God's man, and you are from the enemy of God. So to hell with you. Stand up on it like a man. So, Mr. Dershowitz, if you bring the vaccine and say you're going to bring your army to force us to take it, once you try to force us, that's a declaration of war on all of us.
Okay, there we have his words. That's not the only words. We have about a few more minutes of words from him. But number one, I'm going to start at the beginning. He said that you have pharmaceutical companies that are going to produce 7,500,000,000 vaccines for every man, woman, and child on this planet. Now, in the words of my sister, Ilhan Omar, she said, follow the money. So the question is, who is going to benefit from making a vaccine? Just if each vaccine costs $1 for the vaccine, after you've extracted all of the, all of the costs associated with it, all of the shipping costs, whatever that was associated with it. If you produce enough vaccines for everybody on the planet, and that means that literally, technically, or theoretically, overnight, you can have somebody who has 7,500,000,000 technically, or theoretically, not technically, dollars. A $7 billion plan. Now, you have anything to say before we go ahead and take it?
Are you going to continue with the video or can't? Because I mean, the minister, I did not know that she was going to put this clip up or put the clips in, and it went right into what I have just waiting. That I was
just waiting. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yep, just waiting. And so he, he hit right on it. He keeps bringing up Yacob's history, and he keeps bringing up how there are lessons to be learned in Yacob's history. So here, I have the Supreme Wisdom. So in the Supreme Wisdom, and ask the questions, and what kind of rules and regulations, including all laws enforced, while manufacturing the devil.
Why? That's what I had right there.
Yep. I can't see. Okay, I see.
That's what I wanted to name this.
Yeah. So, but I'm going to fast forward, skip down to the part where it's talking about the job of the nurses and all of us in the Nation of Islam.
You are right on it.
And all those who know about Supreme Wisdom, it reads, the nurses' law was to kill the black baby. Wait, no. I'm gonna go back because it was a word that he used, and I'm gonna segue into the next thing.
You right on it.
So, okay. So I'm just going to read all the way down to that part because it's
Yes, go
beautiful
ahead.
how, when you have knowledge in advance. But the answer is Yacob's first rule was to see that all of his followers were healthy, strong, and good breeders. If not, he sent them back all that he found that was not good in multiplying, and that they should marry at the age of 16. Next, Yacob gave his people the law of birth control to be enforced while manufacturing the devil. That was to destroy the alike and save the unlike, which means kill the black babies and save the brown babies. This law was given to the doctors, the ministers, the nurses, and the cremator. The doctor's law was to examine all that marry, and this was his law, that anyone desiring to marry, first to be qualified by the doctor, and in turn, he qualified or disqualified them to minister.
Yes.
The minister would marry only the ones that were unalike. The nurse's law was to kill the black babies at birth by sticking a needle in the brain of the babies or feed it to some wild beast and tell the mother that her baby was an angel baby and that it was only taken to heaven, and someday when the mother dies, her baby would have secured her a home in heaven. But save all the brown ones and tell their mother that she was lucky that her baby was a holy baby and she should take good care of her baby, educate it, and that someday it would be a great man. And so I'm going to stop right there. But here we have this law of birth control. And specifically the nurse's law was to stick a needle into the brains of the baby. Okay, we're right there. We're right there.
Same exact though.
Okay, so you want to say something before because I brought, like I said,
no ma'am.
Right before all this out. So now, going back to these vaccines, you were saying that these vaccines from Pfizer or Moderna has to be approved by the FDA, and then when you're talking about immunizations, they have to, I guess, come through the CDC because that's who approves the vaccines.
No, the FDA approves. They don't have to go through the CDC. These are for
but
FDA.
The CDC gives recommendations, though.
Yes,
they give recommendations on the vaccines because when I was looking up, like I said, for my paper that I was already in the process of writing, that's what the Louisiana revised statutes say that that's where they get these recommendations for vaccines.
Right.
And so now let me go to the CDC.
And the CDC actually is a military organization.
Exactly. And like I keep saying,
that's why it's called the Surgeon General.
Exactly. If you have an issue with Wikipedia, put it in the chat. Tell me what Wikipedia was wrong. But I'm just going to read off of Wikipedia's page. Okay, so the CDC, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, is a national public health institute in the United States. It is a United States federal agency under the Department of Health and Human Services, and it is headquartered in Atlanta. Its main goal is to protect public health and safety through control and prevention of disease, injury, and disability in the U.S. and international. Now, interesting that this is the U.S. Department. Why is it worried about international health? So that's food for thought. But now I'm going to scroll down. So now we see that the CDC says that that's their main goal, is to prevent disease and injury in the United States. And it's a United States federal agency.
So wait, let's scroll back up just for a second, because there's something else. Okay, so infectious disease, foodborne pathogens. So it also deals with food too, but they just want to focus on the viruses or the pathogens.
Because when the minister, and it was beautiful how he showed that when he started talking about Fauci and Bill Gates, they had this graphic that came across the screen with the needles and the vials, and it had the CDC and the World Health Organization's logo in the background.
Right.
So let's go to the establishment of the CDC and let's see who we find some interesting characters that we've been talking about in this educational conspiracy. So the establishment, the Communicable Disease Center was founded July 1st, 1946 as a successor to the World War II Malaria Control in War Areas Program of the Office of National Defense Malaria Control Activities. Preceding its founding, organizations with global influence in malaria control were the Malaria Commission of the League of Nations. You need to look into the League of Nations. I'm going
Yes.
to say that, and the Rockefeller Foundation. And the same Rockefeller family and Rockefeller organizations that started the General Education Board that we talked about when we were talking about the plan for the country school in America. It's the same Rockefellers that were in the oil magnates and the ones that were yes. And so the Rockefeller Foundation greatly supported malaria control, sought to have the governments take over some of its efforts and collaborative agencies. Okay, so I just read off of Wikipedia. I didn't say anything bashing Rockefellers, but now that's one organization that the Rockefellers funded. Now let's look what else the Rockefellers were putting their money to around the same time. Yeah. Now you have the eugenics in America. So give you again, eugenics. I'll just read off the page. Like I said, don't argue with me. If you have something wrong with Wikipedia, put it in the comments. Eugenics is the set of beliefs and practices which aims at improving the genetic quality of the human population, played a significant role in the history and culture of the United States during the progressive era from the late 19th century into the U.S. involvement in what? World War II. So while ostensibly about improving genetic quality, it has been argued that genetics was more about preserving the position of the dominant groups in population. Scholarly research has determined that people who found themselves targets of the eugenics movement were those seen as unfit for society. So when the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan was talking about these groups of people that think that they are better than other people, and they say that they're useless eaters, and because they feel like they're superior over others, they think that others are justified, or they're justified in wiping these people off the face of the planet Earth. But those who are seen as unfit for society, the poor, the disabled, the mentally ill, and specific communities of color. And a disproportionate number of those who fell victim to eugenic sterilization initiatives were women who identified as African American, Hispanic, or Native American. As a result, the United States progressive era eugenics movement is now generally associated with racist and nativist elements, as the movement was to some extent a reaction to a demographic and population changes, as well as concerns over the economy, social well-being, rather than scientific genetics. So here is a movement, a pseudo-scientific movement that was made up. It was fabricated. It was a fabricated lie that was pushed as mainstream science. That's that people of the people of color, and they threw a bunch of other unwanted people in society in that group, but it was mainly a reaction to the change in the population demographics. So going back to when we study our teachings, we studied the teachings of the Most High God Muhammad and the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We learn about this history. Like I said, I'm not going to connect every little piece, but this is what he's talking about. But now, like I was saying, let's see who we find. The American eugenics movement was rooted in the biological determinist idea of Sir Francis Galton, who originated in the 1880s. In 1883, Sir Galton first used the word eugenics to describe scientifically the biological improvement of genes in the human race as a concept of being well born. He believed that differences in a person's ability were acquired primarily through genetics, and that eugenics could be implemented through selective breeding in order for the human race to improve its overall quality, therefore allowing all humans to direct their own evolution. So this is a like I said, pseudoscience, not based, like they said, not based in actual genetic science, but these people believe that because you're related to somebody genetically, social Darwinism. Yes, that makes you better than other people who are not. And if you study scripture, that has always been the downfall of people they got caught up in the genetic relation to, say, for instance, Abraham. And that that was the whole thing, even about Jesus's ministry, what he chided the Jews of that time about they were saying, well, we are Abraham's, seed. And he
In
was
the
like,
eighth
no,
book
you're
of
not
John.
Abraham's seed
Mhm.
because you don't do the works of Abraham. That
Right.
is in oh, I'm not gonna get to that. But
it's the 8th chapter of John.
right, but this type of thinking is not new.
It's a satanic mindset.
Exactly. And who did Jesus say those people were the seed of?
Synagogue.
Satan.
Synagogue.
Satan was their father because of
That's
their
right.
thinking.
Thinking.
But the American
He
eugenics
said
movement,
because you want to kill a man who has told you the what? True.
right. And if your father was Abraham, then you would love me. There you go.
Mhm.
So, but it gets deep. But the American eugenics movement received extensive funding from various corporate foundations, including the Carnegie Institution. Who is that again? The Rockefeller Foundation. So the same person at the Harrimans from the railroad. But so the same foundation that was founding American health organizations and international health organizations was also funding a community that were racist and that were bent on depopulating the planet of what they call unfit people that mainly targeted people of color.
And the ones they could not call, what they did is they got into the mind through the education. So they funded and backed the education. And you see on PBS, the Rockefeller Foundation, the Carnegies,
I remember watching that after every program. But now, who else do we found as a part of? Because this is just Rockefeller, and I'm showing, like you said, follow the money. We're talking about Ilhan Omar and follow the money. So he's funding these two things that seem diametrically opposed. Because this one is about preserving from injury and death, and this one is about profiting from injury and death or promoting injury and death.
You have both sides.
Exactly. So we go down further. And so here we go. It says several feminist reformers advocated of eugenics legal reform. The National Federation of Women's Club, the Women's Christian Temperance Union, and the National League of Women Voters were among the variety of state and local feminist organizations that at some point lobbied for eugenics reform. One of the most prominent feminists to champion the eugenics agenda was who? Margaret Sanger, the leader of the American birth control movement and the founder of Planned Parenthood. So again, vaccines and birth control are connected by what? That tie of money. So we're following the money trail. So going back to what was that law? Yacob gave his people the law of birth control to enforce while manufacturing the devil, and that was to destroy the alike and save the unalike, which meant kill the black babies and save the brown ones. And so again, when we go to that nurse, some people might say, "Oh, we in post, gender society," but I'm pretty sure that this nurse in the Supreme Wisdom was mentioning a female. Always using the feminine. So again, the nurse's law was to kill the black babies at birth by sticking a needle in the brain of the babies or feed it to some wild beast and tell the mother that her baby was an angel baby and then would be taken to heaven. And so here we have that nurse. That was we have identified the nurse that is one of the laborers of Yacob in the modern time. And her job, she started a whole organization about, halting what she called unfit eaters from reproducing.
That's right.
Right here. So now, go even further, bringing it back to Bill Gates, because that's who he mentioned. As we all know, or we should know by now, that Bill Gates' father was on the board of Planned Parenthood.
That's right.
And Bill Gates' father even, I'm paraphrasing, but he said that everywhere that they went, the Gates' family went looking for reproductive health and their research, and that they found the Rockefellers had already laid the path for them as far as it goes with reproductive health and things like that. So now let's hear what Bill Gates has to say that he's going to use or how he thinks vaccinations are going to help with population control. Because
Okay.
population control is a soft term for population reduction. Now
Yes, it is.
Here, it's a short clip, 3 minutes. 3-minute
Okay.
clip of Bill Gates himself. Again, don't take it up with me, take it up with Bill Gates. So let me see here. You can hear the sound?
We need to meet a new constraint. And that constraint has to do with CO2. CO2 is warming the planet. And the equation on CO2 is actually a very straightforward one. If you sum up the CO2 that gets emitted, that leads to a temperature increase. And that temperature increase leads to some very negative effects. The effects on the weather, perhaps worse, the indirect effects in that the natural ecosystems can't adjust to these rapid changes, and so you get ecosystem collapses. Now, the exact amount of how you map from a certain increase in CO2 to what temperature will be and where the positive feedbacks are, there's some uncertainty there, but not very much. And there's certainly uncertainty about how bad those effects will be, but they will be extremely bad. I asked the top scientists in this several times, do we really have to get down to near zero? Can't we just, cut it in half or a quarter? And the answer is that until we get near to zero, the temperature will continue to rise. And so that's a big challenge. It's very different than saying, we're a 12-foot high truck trying to get under a 10-foot bridge and we can just sort of squeeze under. This is something that has to get to zero. Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3. The second factor is the services we use. This encompasses...
Okay, so I'm going to play that last part again, just in case you missed it.
First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health...
So wait, what was the first thing he said? Because here he is talking about reducing the population as a way to reduce carbon emissions. So
Right.
He said, in order to reduce the number of populations, what was the first thing he said would help in reducing population?
He says you have vaccines, not birth control, but population reduction.
No, he said, I said the first thing he said was new vaccines. But
Yes.
The first factor he said that was going to help in reducing the population.
Yeah,
Now,
how are they connected? Because vaccines are supposed to help you stay alive, right?
Exactly. But vaccines, to him, he says vaccines are going to help reduce the population.
Okay, well, hold that point.
Reproductive health services. We could lower that by...
I just want to, he said the factors, he said reproductive...
services. We could lower that by perhaps health care, reproductive health services. We could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15...
Hold that point, okay? Now, let me share a screen with you right quick. before we follow the money. So let me pull the screen up first. And then we'll come back to following the money, because we really have to end at, I think 3 hours is enough for anybody. I could go on, trust and believe.
I know, I
keep
can.
going.
That was, I think we made that disclaimer in the first episode. We can talk about this forever.
Yes, we can. So this is an article that I found on NPR, and this is not by any stretch of the imagination in the first article. There's another one that's dealing with Iran, but this one, they're talking about a medical investigation. How did 494 children in one Pakistani city get HIV? And you see what they have right there, doctors. And so they talk about how that they were using these tainted needles to give babies vaccines.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of these vaccines are funded by the World Health Organization. Mm-hmm. And then there's another case in Iran where they had given the children vaccines with tainted needles. And the healthcare workers were actually arrested and they were put in jail. And so without going into that lawsuit, but this is what this World Health Organization, so when these big pharma, when they start producing these vaccines and sending them to other countries, because a lot of times they'll do this in the name of helping to reduce some kind of disease or something like that, or birth control or whatever. But there are a lot of tainted vaccines, and these are the proofs. This is NPR. Some people said they're real left leaning, but these are actual cases, regardless of how you think this article or this is spun, because there are some people that believe that NPR is, really, really all news is fake news. Just let's be honest. But the thing about every now and again, you can get some facts if you filter through the news. So let me move on to following the money. Yeah. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
I want to do one more video from Bill Gates himself.
Okay, that's where we're going.
The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation contributes heavily to the World Health Organization and the CDC. So again, follow the money. But that was Bill Gates saying that he believes that vaccines and reproductive health, services can lower birth when you think reproduction.
And let me just say this. A lot of people think that this is a conspiracy theory. So a lot of people are like, that's just a conspiracy theory. Bill Gates is very philanthropic. He gives away half of his earnings to, philanthropic endeavors and so on and so forth. But mind you, Bill Gates did not even complete college. Not saying that you have to complete college, but he's speaking about something that he has no background in, other than, his parents with the Planned Parenthood. Perhaps he's done some little internet research or whatever, but he does not have a medical degree. He is not a virologist. He is not, he's a private citizen who's injected himself into a public issue. And so that's all I want to say about that. Those are words from his mouth. We didn't do any mouth overs or voiceovers or anything like that. Those are his words.
Right.
Okay.
And this is to further, now that we know that's what he said, he thinks is going to help reduce the population,
right,
carbon emissions low. Now this is him going and explaining the reasoning behind how vaccines are supposed to lower birth rates, but listen to the demographics that he said this campaign is targeting.
And then once we finish this, we'll go straight into the other articles and then we'll wrap it up.
Yes, I'll go.
Okay.
Let's go to a couple questions that we've actually received since we started the webcast. The first is on population growth, and the question is, one of our most pressing issues is population growth. How do you expect this to be addressed?
Well, the population growth issue at the global level is not that daunting. That is, the population percentage-wise is growing slower today than in the past, and so it will actually peak out. The problem is that the population is growing the fastest where people are less able to deal with it. So it's in the very poorest places that you're going to have a tripling in population by 2050. And so their ability to feed, educate, provide jobs, stability, protect the environment in those locations mean they're faced with an almost impossible problem. Northern Nigeria, Yemen, Chad. And so what we need to do is take this aid generosity and this innovation and go into those places, offer the women better tools where they want to space birthing or have a smaller family size, and improve health, because it's amazingly, as children survive, parents feel like they'll have enough kids to support them in their old age, and so they choose to have less children. Niger right now, it's still 7 children per family, whereas in the richer countries, you're often at a stable point of which is 2.1 or even less. And so it's really an acute problem in a certain number of places, and we've got to make sure that we help out with the tools now so that they don't have an impossible situation later.
Okay.
I don't think about.
Okay, go ahead.
Because I have to. Because I'm not going to. I'm not. He said it, and I think everybody gets the point now. But I just have to bring the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad to the witness stand, and reading straight out of the Message to the Black Man. What is that?
Okay.
Says what? Birth control.
Birth control.
Death
Yes.
plan. The
That's
next
it.
section is plan to destroy our race. And
That's
then
what he
the
says.
section right before that was what was a few pages right before that. The Black woman. You must
That's right.
protect and elevate your woman. Who
That's right.
he say that they were going to approach and give these
The women.
vaccines to?
Mm-hmm.
The women.
But that's how Yacob always works. He went through the women, remember?
And I'm just going to read this small section where it's in all caps. Sterilization is not birth control, but
That's right.
the end of all possibility to bear children.
That's right. 1965, he was already on.
And he that reasoning that he said that rich people have small families.
Yeah.
I just want to show you
2.1 or less than that.
2.1, right? He said it's the poor people who's having all those children. Rich people
7 children
have small families.
Yes.
Look at here. The same Rockefeller, look how many children that John D. Rockefeller had. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 children.
Mm-hmm.
And then his son, John D. Rockefeller Jr.,
Mm-hmm.
had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 children. And
That's
these
right.
were known to be the richest people in the world at that time.
That's right.
So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin to, because we're going to end this segment, and we, I don't know if we have anybody joining us today. You may have to watch this one in 3 parts if you watch it in the future, but it's okay. And let's go ahead and share, because we need to really understand what's going on. Now, this is Vox News. I mean, it's some people, but that's not the point. The point here is that we know that if you're making 7,500,000,000 vaccines, that somebody is going to get paid. And Big Pharma usually is the one with the deep pockets. So Bill Gates, it says here, is spending 150 million trying to make a coronavirus vaccine as cheap as $3. And it says, pay more attention to what Gates is doing overseas than what he's saying about it in the United States. And I'm not going to read a lot of it, but it says a lot of people are paying attention to every utterance from Bill Gates, American billionaire, conscious in the coronavirus era, cum conscious in the coronavirus era about the United States' response to the pandemic. but much less attention is paid to what Gates is actually pouring his fortune into, stealing the rest of the world for the coronavirus vaccine they will receive next year. So start just following the money. And that's one thing. Now, here's another one, another article. It says COVID-19 vaccine players will split $100 billion in sales and $40 billion in profits, with Moderna leading the way, analysts. Now, this is Fierce Pharma. This is a website, and I was like, well, who is this? I want to know who these people are to report this, because I don't want to just, be giving out information, fallacious information, and not at least doing some due diligence. So what I did is that I looked up who this organization is. And Fierce Pharma is a biopharma. Biopharma is a fast-growing world where big ideas come along daily. Our readers rely on Fierce Pharma for the latest news, analysis, and data on drugs and the companies that make them. Fierce Pharma covers the pharma waterfront from late stage drug development through the entire life cycle, tracking regulatory approvals, payer negotiations, manufacturing, marketing, patent fights, government investigations and regulations, M&A deals, and beyond. Our aim is to analyze the day's news, showing the readers not only what they need to know, but why they need to know it. Beyond the daily, the Fierce Pharma team produces special reports that take stock of the industry's products and finances and sheds new light on industry trends. So that's Fierce Pharma. So let's go here and just right quick. Well, the title says enough. You're talking about the profits that are being done, but I guess I will go here to say this. It says, but Evercore, that's another corporation, is predictions, including some assumptions that the investors questioned, particularly about Moderna. Scheimer estimated that at a price of $35 a dose and a 50% profit margin and a 20% tax rate, the company's $30 billion market cap implies it will sell more than 2 million doses. Plus, the company could very well sell more than 2 million doses at a higher price. And it has other vaccines in the pipeline that could pay off down the road. So when you're talking about pumping out these vaccines, this is a cash cow that people are looking at. So follow the money, follow the money. Now, what is the next side of this? The next side of this with the vaccines, when these companies are pumping out these vaccines like this, what if something happens to you? What if something happens to your children when you get these vaccines? The Supreme Court has ruled that you cannot sue law vaccine makers. And this article says, Supreme Court rules in favor of protecting vaccine makers from state lawsuits. The United States Supreme Court reached the decision recently, this is back in 2018 that it updated, concluding that the federal law protects vaccine makers from product liability that are filed in state court and seeking damages for injuries or death attributed to the vaccine. Now that's just that. So whatever the side effects are of these vaccines, there's no one that you can go after to help you take care of yourself if something happens to you, or help take care of your child if something happens to them. And this is the code itself. And this is 42 US Code of 300 AA-22. And the rule it reads like this: the general rule, except as provided in subsections B, C, and E, state laws shall apply to civil actions brought for damages for a vaccine-related injury or death. Unavoidable adverse side effects warning. No vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damages arising from a vaccine-related injury or death associated with the administration of a vaccine after October 1st, 1988. If the injury or death resulted from the side effects that were unavoidable, even though the vaccine was properly prepared and accompanied by proper direction and warning. For the purposes of paragraph 1, the vaccine shall be presumed to be accompanied by proper direction and warnings if the vaccine manufacturer shows that the company, in all material respects, with all requirements under such Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act 21 USC .301 and Section 262 of this title, including regulations, including issued under such provisions applicable to the vaccine and related to vaccine-related injuries or death for which the civil action was brought, unless the plaintiff shows A, that the manufacturer engaged in conduct set forth by subparagraph A, or B, Section 300 AA-23D2 of this title, or B, I'm not going to read all the rest of it because it just becomes legalese, or B, the clear and convincing evidence that the manufacturer failed to exercise due care notwithstanding its compliance with such act and section and regulations issued under such provisions. And it says, well, I have to read this: direct warning. No vaccine manufacturer shall be liable in a civil action for damages arising from a vaccine-related injury or death associated with the administration of a vaccine after, this is basically the same thing, after October 1st, 1988, solely due to manufacturer's failure to provide direct warnings to the injured party or the injured party's legal representative of the potential dangers resulting from administration of the vaccine manufactured by the manufacturer. So basically, it doesn't matter. If anything happens, you have no one to go to. So you think about this, that genetic material that has been administered to you, there is nothing that you can do, because once it is in your system, it is there for life. And if it should have an adverse effect now, or 10 years from now, or 20 years from now, there's no one that you can go back to and sue. We are at, it's 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. I want us to listen to the last few minutes of the clip that I have for the minister on the July 4th, the criterion guidance that he gave us. And then after that, we'll have our closing remarks, make our announcements, and then we'll close out. But we thank you all for hanging in there with us. Those have made it to the end of the video. So let's go ahead and listen to the last few remarks that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has to say on the COVID vaccine.
You only have this one life.
Yes, sir.
Fight like hell to keep it, and fight like hell to destroy those whose heart and mind is to destroy you and take your life from you. So don't take their vaccines. There are 14 therapies that are in the world today that we can use to fight against the COVID virus. America, you won't solve it.
Right.
The scientists of the world, you won't solve it. Guess what? I want to tell you what will solve it. You ready?
Yes, sir.
This virus is a pestilence from heaven.
Yes, sir.
So scholarship from hell can't deal with a pestilence that came from heaven. But if you want to stop it, you have to go to heaven. There has to be a natural connection between heaven and earth. And once that connection is broken, heaven does not suffer.
Right.
It's the earth that suffers. America, you took prayer out of the school. You can't redeem the school unless you redeem it with the true scholarship that should always be present in any house of learning. It's the God of knowledge. We are sitting in the midst of pure truth. Everything that God created is truth.
Yes, sir.
And in everything that he created is a lesson. So we're in a book if we would learn.
Yes, sir.
So COVID is spiking.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how many states are seeing the spike. How many? 36? No, you're not keeping up with the news. It's more like 40 going toward 50. Nobody's going to escape. You ain't seen the worst of this yet. I'm learning something.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So Jesus, now I'm coming back to this great one. He said, this wicked and adulterous generation. See? Now look at the iniquity that's in the house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
How many of us are guilty of fornication, of adultery? Come on. You do it so effortlessly that it don't even bother you anymore. Your conscience won't even talk about you anymore, talk to you anymore, because you've sentenced the messenger of God in your being to death. That's why God has to send a pestilence after a pestilence. So this pestilence is going to get worse. But America, but China, if you don't want to get caught up in the next phase of the blowing of the trumpet, then what you should do is call your people together and come out to them and ask them to go in their chambers of quiet and ask forgiveness for your sins have reached unto heaven. Relieve our brothers and sisters in Cuba of the burden, the unjust burden of your embargo. Because we're not going to take no medicine that you, the killers of all of us, remember the syphilis experiment? Remember what they did to the Native Americans with smallpox? Remember the vaccine that they gave us for polio that was cancer itself? So how in the hell could you trust them with a vaccine after you know what they have done and that they're capable of doing it again on a bigger and broader level? It's government policy to reduce the population of the earth by 2 to 3 billion people. You know that, right? If you don't know it, I've been telling you about it. And they're using methods that Zbigniew Brzezinski mentioned. It's easier to kill 1 million people than it is to control 1 million people. Zbigniew was not playing.
No, sir.
It is easier to kill 1 million because they're killing millions as we speak.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We will not accept your vaccine.
Yes, sir.
So you can slow down. Because whenever you bring it out, it's for your people.
Yes, sir.
You give it to them.
Yes, sir.
Because we're not accepting death.
At all.
Because you are the very representative of death itself. The pale horse. And everywhere you've gone in the world, hell went right behind you. We are sick of hell.
Yes, sir.
And we are sick of death.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There we have it. Those are closing words by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. You know, who knows what could happen with this video, but you know, we have to sound the alarm because you only have one life. Your child only has one life. And when we're talking about introducing something to you that could have an adverse effect on you for your life, you know, it's just something that you really have to stop and consider. And we pray that we don't consider this based upon that we have to go to work. You know, I don't have anywhere to put my children, so I have to give them a vaccine. If you wind up giving your child a vaccine, let it be because you really believe that the vaccine is the best thing for their health. Don't let it be because somebody has forced you into doing this because of finances, because of your body. Let me just stop. Your body is the only sovereign place that you have that nobody has the right to but the God who made it. So please, I beg of you, before you do anything with yourself, with your children, make sure that you know. As the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, we want to know what's in these vaccines. We have suffered at their hands, you know, from syphilis, from smallpox, to all these vector-borne viruses that they've injected in vaccines in the past, you know, autism. Please, it's not worth it. It is not worth your life. It is not worth your child's life. We really suggest that you boost your immune system. The minister said there are 14 therapies. You have what is that? It's not immunosuppressants, it's interferons, alpha interferons. They have some protocols that deal with high doses of vitamin C that's taken intravenously. That's what they did in China. Vitamin D, which is also along with K3. You have zinc therapies. You have, but those are the ones that I know that are vitamin therapies and the alpha interferons. Of course, going outside, getting fresh air, mental health, that's a therapy. And so do your research. Wear your masks. An ounce of prevention, as they say, beats a pound of cure. Just take a little extra time and make sure that you wash your hands. Good hand washing goes a long way when it comes to this. But don't be bullied into taking this vaccine, because it could mean the rest of your life. And that's all we have in that wise. That's all I have in that wise. Sister Gabrielle, do you have any closing comments on this topic?
No, ma'am.
Okay, well, I think we've exhausted this topic, and because I was debating on whether or not we'll do a part 2, but I would rather just go ahead and get it out now and be done with it. And inshallah, that you'll share this video with other people. I know it's long and lengthy, but we tried to make sure ahead of these vaccines being put out that we had the information that we need, because now the vaccines are being touted as to being, a miracle. They're trying to make this to be the thing that is from heaven. But just really do your research. And once again, as we close out, we want to make a disclaimer. We are private citizens of the Nation of Islam. Our comments are not the comments that are official comments from the Nation of Islam, official comments from the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. These are observations that we have taken and the little research that we have done as it relates to these vaccines that are about to be rolled out, this situation. And our focus is on education, because, some of these vaccines may actually sound the mental capacity as it talks about in the lessons. And so with our children, we have to be careful about what we put in there, because it may affect us educationally, like in Flint, Michigan, where they have the lead that was put into the water, making the children's cognitive ability slow down. And then they just acted like the governor of the state acted like it didn't exist, when it's just, you cannot fathom, we cannot fathom, I cannot fathom the depths of Satan. But to that end, we're asking you to please share, please give us a thumbs up, give us a like. And also, if you are not a subscriber, please subscribe to our channel. We are getting close to that. I think we're getting close to that 400 mark, and we are looking for to get 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, because we want to share this information with as many people as we can while we still have use of this platform. This podcast is sponsored by the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center, and we have classes that are going to be running for the Supreme Wisdom Curriculum Orientation class that will begin December 14th. We are now taking applications. The seating is limited, so you have to get your registration in now. You can go to www.Supreme Wisdom Educational Center, and then you can look at the online school, click on the online school, and then it'll take you to the link where you can sign up or register for the class, and then you have to go through the process of registration. And then we'd love to have you join us if you qualify. And lastly, the Supreme Wisdom Educational Center is calling for scholarly papers on the topic of Supreme Wisdom and education, the Supreme Wisdom curriculum and current events, and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and education. We are taking applications for reviewers. Applicants should have a background in technical writing and academic writing or editing. Please submit your resumes to us at info@supremewisdomeducationalcenter.org. We would love to be able to have you come aboard with us and, either submit a paper for review or to be one of our reviewers. We really thank you all for being with us. All praises due to Allah. Just please be safe, and may Allah bless us and with the light of his understanding until we see you again next time on the New World Education Podcast. Assalamu alaikum.